Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Redirection with Terri-Karelle. I'm your host, Terri-Karelle. Thank you so very much for just always coming in and making room for me every single Sunday, and maybe not all Sundays, but thank you to those of you who watch the show while you're cooking, you're cleaning. Maybe it's on a Sunday, you're cooking your rice and peas and your Sunday dinner. For those of you who listen to me in your car when you're going to church or you're going to the beach, or for some of you, even though we drop an episode every single Sunday, maybe you're able to catch up in the week. However it is, or whenever it is that you carve out space and time for me and my crew, I absolutely appreciate it. All things Redirection you can find at redirectionpodcast.com. And if you choose to share any of the parts, the snippets, the nuggets, the gems across your social media platforms, please don't forget to use hashtag TK Redirection. Now, this podcast is brought to you by MasterCard in association with Heineken 00 and Toyota Jamaica. Why? Well, life is gonna life, right? And things are gonna hit us unexpectedly, but we kind of want to remind you to celebrate the priceless moments, to remember now you can, and that you have the power, the ability to change your life, community, your nation, one step or drive at a time. I'm a very proud Toyota ambassador. So happy to have them on board again. And of course, driving home the point of inclusion being extremely important where this podcast is concerned. Speaking of inclusion, Tony Aiken, thank you so very much for always being the bridge between ourselves and the deaf community by being our sign language interpreter. For the rest of our partners, you know, season 3 would not be the success it is without you guys. So commercial concepts, thank you. The quality, the production quality just gets better and better every year. And I look forward to working with you guys every chance I get. Spaces, you already know. You come and you create a space that is comfortable and warm and inviting for not just me and my crew, but everyone who sits in the redirection seat. Beauty brands by MDS, because even though we're talking about the grinding and the hustling and you fall down and you dust off yourself and you jump up, we want to remind you that self-care is extremely important. And with MDS and Tree Hut, naturally, they're always speaking about, you know, premium body and skin line and taking care of the person you are and taking care of your health in general. Go Shore Couriers, you know, y'all are the ones who take care of my package. And even when I order them last minute, which I'm not recommending anybody else does, you guys always get my packages to me on time. And of course, Brescia, purposeful, prepared. This is what we're trying to develop in everyone who is on the set and those of you who are watching. And last but not least, in our discussions, we want to remind you that even when life gets tough, just don't forget that the financial decisions that you make today make way for what happens tomorrow. So we just want to acknowledge and thank FHC Credit Union for coming on board for season 3. Now, who's coming next in the redirection seat is somebody who I know for years. We love each other. She's like a very big sister, huge cheerleader. She's someone who is in the business of building meaningful relationships. She's also in the business of building great brands that have influence and impact, and she does it with one smile at a time. She's an authoress, she's a columnist, she does it all, and she does it with such style and grace. So you're curious yet? You want to know who? Well, I'm not going to tell you. You got to stick around to find out. Redirection with Terri-Karelle starts now. Naomi Garrick, PR chick. I say PR guru. I say PR whisperer. I say brand management, reputational damage management, crisis management, cheerleader. You are all of these things. Columnist, author. Welcome to the redirection seat.
Thank
How are
you, Terry.
you?
I'm so happy to be here.
You're
I'm so
beautiful.
Thank you.
Fun fact, guys. Naomi was invited to Redirection last year. She was a part of my 20 guests, and because of unforeseen circumstances, she couldn't make it. And I'm like, we're not replacing. We're just gonna make sure we get you this season. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to finally be here on set.
Finally. So for many of us, and the community is large, it's diverse, they're all over the world. But for people who know you, we always look to you as a brand expert. You are someone who is extremely amazing when it comes to communications, not just for your clients, but even you as a communicator. When you look at where you are now, columnist, Jamaica Observer. You're also a writer, an entrepreneur. When you look at yourself now, is this where you imagined you would be?
Absolutely not.
Talk to me about growing up, what your dreams, your interests, your initial interests were, and then we're going to walk through the transition between who you were and who you are and who you're becoming.
So what I'll say is this show is Redirection.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of redirecting. So I grew up in Kingston with my mother, my two brothers, and my father.
Yes.
So small little nuclear family. The great thing was that both of my parents were entrepreneurs. So my mother had an art gallery and art and gifts shop called The Wanderer.
Yes.
So a lot of Campionites used to go there, people from Priory, because we lived right beside Priory High School, so on Queensway. And she sold unusual arts and crafts from all over the world. So if you wanted unusual things, you got it from her. And then my dad worked with the Marley family. So he was executive director of the Bob Marley Foundation at the time. But he is also an artist. So we were always used to having our I grew up with entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. My grandmother is an artist as well.
Creative people in general.
Mm-hmm. So to be honest, I never thought I was creative because I was surrounded by creativity and my creativity didn't look the same. I'm learning now that communication is a form of creativity.
Yes, it is. It's an art.
I definitely thought I was not the creative one.
Yes.
So grew up very close-knit family. I thought I wanted to be a flight attendant because my mother used to fly with Air Jamaica when it was the Air Jamaica, when it was still the Lovebird and it was, orange and white. And
the women were the most beautiful.
Oh my God. And then they used to do like things like fashion shows on the plane. That was the entertainment. I mean, maybe that's not appropriate now.
Yeah.
But at the time that was the entertainment and I thought it was a very glamorous lifestyle.
And we're not aging ourselves, but for those of us who do remember those fashion shows and as children you'd get coloring books and crayons and everything. It really was
like a very fabulous life.
It was.
Until I started traveling and realized very quickly that traveling is not for me. I don't enjoy it. To this day, I don't like to fly. I will be the first to sign up for teleportation when it is available. It's not my thing. So I used to get sick all the time. At takeoff, landing, that little baggie that's in the seat, it was always here, just in case.
So you said air stewardess X.
No, quickly,
not for me.
Very quickly, I knew it wasn't for me. And I talk about this all the time because, in high school here in Jamaica and the Caribbean, we're supposed to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives at 13 because we are picking our subjects for CXC.
And people are always asking you, so what do you want to
be when you grow up? I had no ideas because I was still playing with Barbies and doing foolishness with my friends. So I really didn't know. And I just picked subjects that I was good at or that I liked. The same thing happened for A-levels. Mm-hmm. Again, I just picked subjects that I liked. My A-level grades were not great, but that's another story. But then it got to university and I definitely didn't know what I wanted to do. One thing though is that I was definitely a chatterbox. So I've always been a chatterbox. In Jamaica we say that's being nuff, but I think there are a lot of benefits to being nuff. I know that now. And
talk to me about that because, we have a very, and it's not just a Jamaican thing, it's a Caribbean thing. And you could even go as far as to say it's also the Black experience, right? Where people encourage you to be confident. No, man, be confident. Put your best foot forward. And that's what people tell you. But then the moment
too much.
But then the moment you become bold and you're self-aware and you're confident and you're not afraid to ask questions and to step out, it's like, whoa.
Who does she think she is?
Who do you think you are? Not so much.
Not so much. So from a very early age, so I remember I went to St. Peter and Paul Prep.
Yes.
And one of my teachers used to call me RGR, communications group. And I remember once she sent me to the principal's office for them to tape up my mouth. I know we don't do this anymore. What? Tape up my mouth to go back to the class with a tape on my mouth. So I've always been a chatterbox.
And did it ever like?
But I didn't feel any way.
Okay.
Like my mother would probably say, I don't have no shame. I really didn't feel any way.
Because
I thought it was cool.
Because that was my question to you now, because you do have persons who, because of the influence and the impact of other persons, external factors,
absolutely.
people become shells.
Yeah, and you dim your light,
Correct.
But I guess, I don't know, I just felt like, I mean, I was just a talker. So I was just always talking. And then you have siblings. I was the only girl. So, you know, you have to fight your way through the conversations and life. And so chatterbox in prep school, definitely a chatterbox in high school. You know, all my report cards would say that, you know, Naomi has the potential to do
But
great things, but she talks too much. Or, but I like to say that now I get paid to talk.
look at
So there are
that.
benefits to being a
Look at
talker,
that.
but being enough sometimes I think is a great thing because it shows that you have some kind of confidence. You're not afraid to put your hand up. You're not afraid to ask the questions. You're not afraid to ask the stupid questions. And people lean to you for opportunities because they already see you putting yourself out there. I mean, at that age, I didn't think like that, but looking back, I
In
can see the
hindsight.
value. And so because of the same enoughness, when I was trying to decide what to do in university, a lot of my friends would say that because of my talkative personality,
Talkative nature.
right, maybe hospitality might be the best industry for me. And so I chose hospitality and tourism because of that. But then
Seemed like
also
nice
my
fit.
best friend was going to study hotel and tourism. And I am a US citizen, but I've never had the desire to live in the States. So both of my brothers live overseas. My dad lives overseas.
Correct.
I've just never been interested. I love Jamaica. So I'm here. And so I knew I didn't even apply for colleges overseas. It had to be UA or UTech. And so I applied for both UA and UTech, but UTech's results came in first. And you're not sure if any results are going to come in acceptance for UA, so you pick what
What? Yeah.
you got accepted into. So you say yes. You say yes to what you got accepted into. So I got accepted into their program. We were actually the guinea pigs. It was a joint degree program in hotel and tourism management. So we had classes at UA and we had classes at UTech.
Was there any fear or rather, was there any self-doubt going into college? For so many of us, we speak about it as it's almost like a rites of passage. We're moving from prep or primary, go to high school, and it's just this natural progression. Was there any form of fear as you transitioned into what was going to be the end-all, be-all of your career?
I don't think there was fear, and maybe I was a little bit aloof at that age. Because to me, I mean, 18 is still young, guys. I know we're supposed to be adults and we're supposed to know
Absolutely.
everything, but 18 is still pretty young. And the only thing was that my dad graduated from UCLA, and that's something that he always spoke about, the fact that he has his degree from UCLA. So you kind of feel like you're living up to some expectations. And so I feel like that's the only thing that I'd have in the back of my head. But I was just more excited about this new stage of life, especially because
Nice.
like my best friend was going to be there, Tonian, and other friends that I knew got into the program. And then I'd now get to see my friends that got into UE because I had classes at UE
So
and
let's
UTech.
do this
So it's
together.
like, yeah, this was exciting. Went to UAU Tech, did a joint degree program, fell in love with the hospitality and tourism industry. However, I actually did not end up graduating because I could not pass statistics and math and accounting. It's not my thing.
What do you mean? Hold on. First of all, I didn't even know that tourism and hospitality required. I'm sorry, and this could be me being a dunce. I'm ignorant. I didn't even realize that those subjects were necessary.
So those were all the UE subjects. Those were definitely UE fundamental courses. So we had to do two financial accounting courses, whatever their regular mathematics course was, and stats. And I remember at graduation time, I still did not pass statistics, did not pass the mathematics, and didn't pass the two accounting course. So 4 courses outstanding. However, so I didn't graduate. So that was something that definitely I more than felt away.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, my best friend's graduating, all my friends, and I'm the only one in my friend group that did not graduate. However,
And how did your parents help you navigate that time?
to me, I don't even know if it was navigation. I mean, they never ever made me feel bad about it. Both of them have always been very supportive with us about our career choices. Pretty much. They
Nice.
kind of left it up to us, right? So they supported where they could, and then it's our lives, right? So we never ever had that kind of pressure.
And you never came out
It was
feeling.
just,
Did you ever feel like a failure?
I felt like a failure for me personally, especially because, I feel like you're disappointing your parents, even if they didn't express it. And I just felt like, I'm the only one. All my friends are now going to go off to the working world, and I don't even know
You're
if I'm
the
going to get a
other.
job. I'm the other. However, and I'm learning more how resilient I am as I get older, I didn't let that stop me. So At the time, we had, I don't know if you remember Super Clubs.
Of course.
So a lot of younger generation don't know
Of
Super Clubs. So
course.
Super Clubs and Sandals. And at that time, Super Clubs was actually the bigger hotel chain. So everybody wanted to get into either Super Clubs or Sandals trainee manager program. And the first requirement for that is that you need a degree in hospitality and tourism and all these things, which I didn't
And
have.
you're like, ooh.
However, I still applied to the Super Clubs program, and I just put on my resume degree pending. Yep. But what I did was I showed up in that interview dressed like someone that should be a trainee manager. And I spoke to all of my amazing internships that I had done at Terra Nova Hotel and the fact that it should have been a 6-week internship. And after 2 weeks, they gave me a full-time job as a banking and sales coordinator. I spoke about my internship at Round Hill. So I spoke about my value.
Yes.
Right? Did the rounds, got into the program. And so with their training manager program, it's basically how they fast track you to a manager position. So you're in the program for 3 years. You get to work in all the departments, all the hotels
Right.
in the Caribbean, and you're training as a manager in every department. So my first experience was actually at Grand Leader Brackle.
I remember Grand Leader. Wow.
So the Leader properties were like their luxury resorts, right? Grand Leader Negril was the only 5-star hotel, I think, at the time in Negril. And so it was Grand Leader Brackle where they sent me to first, and they needed their first area of need was the sales department for some reason. I think they were short staffed.
Yes.
So that's where I went. It should have been 6 weeks, ended up being 5 months. But again, because of my Nuff personality,
Yes.
everybody knew the Nuff training manager from Kingston because I didn't just stay in the sales department. I was in everybody's department. And I also dressed like how you're supposed to show up. So not just in your black and white that we're trained to in hospitality. I wanted to look like a trainee manager.
How important is that? For two questions, and it's because it's a survey that has always stuck with me. The fact that women, when they did the survey between men and women are less likely to apply for a role or a job or a title or position unless they actually believe they can meet all of the qualifications that are listed.
So that's actually not it. They make sure that they meet all the qualifications and more.
Oh, correct.
Before they apply.
Correct. What
Whereas
advice?
Men would have 2 out of 10.
Or
and
maybe
still
one.
And still apply, and they're like, I'm the man for the job. And I feel like it's because there is so much expectation on women to be excellent. And we do not apply for things unless we know that we can surpass expectations. And so it stops us from a lot of opportunities because we feel like, oh my, it's 10 things and I only have 9. So they're not going to give
I'm
me
not
the
the woman
job.
for the
So we
job.
just don't. But I think because I knew I didn't have this degree, I needed to make sure that I was showing up with everything else that I could bring to that table.
That the degree would become something secondary or tertiary.
Correct. Or just not
In fact,
even,
you're not even think about
right.
it.
Even though I was thinking about it, but I didn't want people to think about it. And so I feel like I distracted with everything else. So with how I showed up, I'm naturally a people person. So I was raised definitely to respect everybody at all levels. So like I spoke with the groundsman the same way I spoke with the general manager.
Correct.
Same kind of relationship right across the board. Like those were my people, the hostmen, the waiters, like that's my people. And so I had a great relationship with a lot of people on the property.
Beautiful.
And what happened once is that they were doing their general managers meeting with all the GMs from all the properties. And I didn't realize I was being observed, right? And that's why I tell people with personal branding, like you're always on show and you don't know who is looking at you for what reason. I never knew anything about personal branding at the time. I was just being myself. And at the end of their thing, I got called into my GM's office and I realized the general manager from Grand Leader Negril was in the office too. And he basically offered me a job on the spot to be a sales manager. So instead of doing 3 years as a training manager where we only got like a stipend, 'cause they pay for everything, I was breaking this contract, going to move to Negril where I thought I'd be at the beach every day. That did not happen. And get paid as a manager. I was a sales manager at their flagship resort.
And you know what is interesting when you say this, I always remember, because for me, I kind of had a similar story, although I started off in, it was a summer job. But the fact is, I say that your excellence has to be unconditional. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the times we believe in being excellent if we know that there are terms. People are watching us, so let's act accordingly. Okay, people are going to be visiting us, so let us act accordingly.
Let's clean up the house.
And
Let's
so we
do all
only
the
clean
things.
up when we believe people are watching, and there's a difference. I think that's what separates the sheep and the goat from the persons who simply show up for themselves in excellence, and therefore whoever observes or experiences it, they just get the cherry on the it's just a bonus
Yeah, and for
for
me, I
them.
wasn't even definitely at that age. I was definitely not thinking excellence. I was just being myself,
But
right?
you are excellence
And
though, Naomi. Like you
thank you,
are in everything you
thank you.
do. Just walking
I'm
in.
trying.
No, just walking in and who you are. Like I'm even hearing you speak about who you used to be in terms of how you behave. And I'm like, that's you. That's who you are to your core though.
Thank you, thank you.
That's beautiful. Oh, sorry.
No,
Please
that's
continue.
fine. That's fine. So I'm now at Grand Lead on the Grill. I'm a sales manager. I'm responsible for Northeast USA, Canada, and Japan. And all of that sounds exciting and stuff. But, that's when I really learned when your lecturers told you that the hospitality industry is a 24-hour industry. It is
Yes.
24 hours. And I lived on property. So even though I'm on sales, I'm a manager. So if something happens on
You're
property
on
in the
call.
night, I'm also on call. And I have to put on my uniform at 2 a.m. to go downstairs to find out what's going on, right? Um, Still love the industry. As I said, didn't go to the beach every day. Probably didn't go to the beach at all.
In fact, I find out that I feel as if when you work at those properties, people on the outside are always like, "Oh my gosh, you get to work at a hotel. You're on the beach," and you're like, "Yeah, I don't ever see the sand. I don't touch the
No.
sand. I do not touch the
And my
water."
friends definitely enjoyed my time at Grand Lido. They came all the time, drove, stayed for the weekend, ate the grilled lamb chops, all the stuff, right? I was working. It's fine. It's fine. So, however, while I was working there, I realized two things very quickly. One, because I was a sales manager for Northeast USA, that meant that I traveled a lot, which was another great perk. So I'm like 23, 24, and I'm getting to
Wow.
travel to all of Boston, Manhattan, like all of Northeast USA. And my job for that part was to basically meet with travel agents and tell them why Super Clubs is so great.
Yeah.
And why they need to tell their guests to come to us instead of Sandals. That was my job for that part. So that was great and exciting. But then when we actually got groups, because we'd have something called hotel takeovers, where
Yeah.
they literally book out the
Entire
entire
hotel.
hotel and they're there with us for like 7 days. And if they come from your territory, you are responsible for them for their entire stay. So all their activities, everything. So there was a period where we were having groups back to back to back, and they were all from my territory, which meant that I would go maybe 2 weeks, no day off, right? Because as one group checked out,
Jeez.
another one was checking in. And I remember during that time, I got very sick. I ended up getting
Burnout.
tonsillitis and bronchitis at the same time, which I think it was just body
Your
come down,
body.
like I just popped down. And it made me reevaluate my life
Your industry.
and the industry. And something else I'd observed was that women in senior positions didn't really, they kind of were stuck to me, like at the same level. And they were just always at work. And I knew in the future I'd want to have children or a family or a spouse or a partner. And I was
And
just
this
like,
may not
where
be
would I
conducive.
spend time with them because they're always here? So I made a decision to come back to Kingston, not knowing what the heck I was going to do, because looming over my head is, you do not have a degree, nobody's going to hire you. So that was a limiting belief I had for years, and it was just always there. I ended up meeting Kimani Robinson, RETV.
Yes.
They probably had started maybe the year before or maybe a couple of years before, and he needed a sales and marketing coordinator. I have no marketing experience, but I still showed up for that conversation and I spoke about my sales experience. I got the job, ended up working there for almost 5 years.
So you basically were just taking risks. Like even though you had this,
I just
even though, and I think
I
this
spoke
is
about what I knew.
no, yeah, but I think this is where we talk about courage, right? And courage isn't always like how these movies depict, where it's this, oh, it's the fact that even though you had this limiting belief of, even will I be good enough because this will always be something people require of me, you're still saying I am willing to take a risk on myself.
And it's not like how it is now where, you can create your own job and you're doing all, and it's acceptable. Having a degree was very, very important. It was
gospel.
on every single job. Like you had to have a first degree in something to be even considered. But Kimani didn't care about that, so which was great. But what happened while I was there is really interesting. I actually did a little bit of TV during that time too, which I always forget I don't speak about that. So we had a show called E Weekly, and I would give like the E News, like the little tidbits every hour on the hour, basically. And so I did a lot of things at RETV, to be honest.
I find that
we call
media-
it, PJ and I call it the School of Kimani. That's what it really
Yeah,
was. We learned a lot.
But I also find that those spaces actually push you to try things that you wouldn't typically
Yeah, and
want to
because
do.
it was small, cable was brand new, so it was very exciting and dynamic, and a lot of things were happening. We just started the RETV high school tour as well, which was
I remember
amazing,
that.
a lot of fun. And what happened during that time is, I don't know if you remember Dexter
Of
Pottinger.
course.
So
God
Dexter
rest
used to
his soul.
do the makeup for a lot of our presenters, and at the time he had just started working with like Tifa and Natalie Storm and Timberly and stuff like that. You know, they're the hot girls in dance.
Why, that was a good year. That was a good
Yeah.
time.
And he said to me, you know, he's like, he's doing somebody's makeup in my office. It could have been my makeup, honestly. I don't remember. And he started talking about the fact that Tifa needed a publicist. So I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, man, she need a publicist. I agree. And then he was just like, yeah, I think you should be her publicist.
Did you think he was like,
Of course I did. Because I was just like, at that point, I had written maybe one press release I mean, I was a good writer. I actually used to be a writer for the Teenage Observer when I was in university. Forget about that sometimes too. So I knew I had good writing skills. I feel like if I didn't do
But you're like, publicist.
publicist, that's like, I knew nothing about that life. I kind of see it on TV, but I don't really know what that means. But he was so convinced that I was the person for this job that I convinced myself that I was the person for this job. And I said, okay, I will try. And we didn't have Google yet. So I walked to Sangsters and I bought all the books I could find on PR, how to be a publicist, PR for dummies, everything.
Yeah,
They're still
because
in
this
my
is not
office
YouTube.
right
Like,
now.
this is not YouTube.
There's
this is
no
not click of a
YouTube.
button.
There is no, remember, we didn't have we had the online encyclopedias that's on a CD. So that's what we had for information.
At least you're talking about CD. I
Right.
had like the actual hard
The
copy.
we had the hard copy ones
encyclop-
too, right? So I learned about it. And then, but what I didn't realize was because of my, again, this enough personality where I knew everybody, I'm very relationship driven. And so I make very strong relationships with everybody that I meet. And I had developed really key relationships with the decision makers in the media because I worked in media. So I could pick up the phone and call an Anthony Miller and ask him if he wants to come and do behind the scenes from Tifa's latest video. Or I could call the editor of The Star for entertainment.
And you didn't realize at the time how valuable that was.
I was just talking to these people because they're just my people. We're in the same industry. And so I realized that my combination of being able to write, having these media connections, it gave me access and easy access or easier access. So I started doing work for Tifa, and then I started seeing the things being published. And then other artists started seeing the things being published. And then other artists started reaching out to me to be their publicist. So
And you said, okay.
I said, okay. And so I became an entertainment publicist, and that was my side hustle at Garrick Communications. I actually just found a sticker with my first logo that I had while I was at RETV that I literally copied GQ's logo and turned the Q to a C, and it was pink and black. And that was my logo. And I remember my brother saw it. He's like, are you crazy? You cannot just steal somebody's logo and change the letter. And that's how my logo was created. My brother created it because of that.
And I think what's interesting is, and it occurred to me the moment you said it earlier, when you said when you were in school at the time, because you were talkative, that, you know, they used to call you RJR Communications.
I didn't even
Group.
think about that until
it was the first thing I thought about. And it's just like, it's interesting how the irony is not lost upon us. And certainly God has a huge sense of humor that years later, you kind of go through different, you know, ebbs and flows, and you come around where you know actually form Garrick Communications. Like, that's...
I didn't think about it like that.
What do you mean? Hold on, you're just connected.
And I remember RETV was acquired by RJR Communications Group. I didn't think about that either.
That's amazing. And so here it is, you're taking it on. At that moment, at any point in time, did you go, you know, maybe I'm taking on more than I can chew? I mean, are people asking me to do things that are now above my capacity? Am I reaching my capacity?
I'm sure I made up a lot of stuff. Because, I mean, you're making stuff up as you go along. Like it's trial and error. You're winging. You're literally, I mean, I'm using what I know, but then a lot of things I kind of had to just figure out on the fly. So you kind of just making things up, but then the things worked, and then you do more stuff and it works. So, you know, I was an entertainment publicist, but then so I was enjoying that. I mean, I thought I was at the prime of my life. I was 25, and then I was pregnant with my son, Ajani. And I was redirected because it was like, for me, it was almost like a complete mind shift the minute I found out I was pregnant. It's like I started looking again. Same thing with Super Club. It's like I started looking back at this life. I'm like, all right, I'm in entertainment. I currently have to be out and about. I do publicist work for artists, which means I have to be at studio. I have to
Yep.
be on set.
Rehearsals,
I have to be
this,
every
that.
stage show, every dance, every concert, every media launch. Combination of RETV work and artist work was a lot. And I was like, started reminiscing on how we grew up and the fact that we had access to our parents. So even though they were busy, my mother's gallery was
They're
at our
still
house.
core,
I could walk next
present.
door there. They were available. And with the work I was doing, I was not going to be an available parent. So again, I started looking at, okay, so what do I actually want to do? I don't want to do hospitality, but that's what I know. I don't want to do entertainment, but that's what I know. And I don't have a degree, so who is going to hire me? So that was always there, like, who is going to hire you? And then fate would have it, the Spanish Court Hotel was opening, and they needed a corporate communications manager. And this is first boutique hotel in Kingston.
Yes.
My friend was the acting GM, and she reached out to me and said, they're looking for a corporate communications manager. And I said, okay. I said, well, I know nothing about corporate communications, but I'm going to apply for this job.
It's hospitality, but it's boutique, it's small. So you're trying to...
So that's what I looked at. I went, and again, the first thing that was on the thing was a degree in hospitality or something, which I didn't have. But I still went in, and what I did was I dressed for the role. Now we had Google, and I was able to look to see, what do people look like in corporate communications internationally. I had just cut my hair in this hairstyle. So I felt like I was looking sharp, and I remember what I wore and everything. So literally from a walk through the door, you kind of like, oh, who's
you
this person?
you commanded that
So
attention.
I wanted to show up looking the part, even though I may not be ready for the part. And then I jumped right into my experience. So I was bringing to the table hospitality experience and media experience, which no other candidate would be bringing to this interview. So I focused more on that. So we didn't even talk about degrees and not completing degrees and all those things.
I think what you're doing is you're reframing perspective in a very big way, because I think whenever we go into circumstances and interviews, for example, a lot of us are so stuck on what we don't have. It's the lack, it's the shortcoming, it's who the other people are, it's what they're bringing. And a lot of the times we don't truly focus with intention on what are we bringing to the, like, what are we really?
What else are you bringing?
Yeah,
because
what are we bringing?
If you think about university students, when they graduate, and if we all graduate with the same degree and we all get an opportunity for this interview, what do you say in that room that allows you to stand out from somebody else that just graduated and interviewed with the same exact degree that you have?
What's your differentiator?
And so it's like, what else are you bringing to? So that's great, and that's a foundation, and it's important, but what else? And we all bring something different because of our unique experiences. There's no one in the world that has the same experience that you have, or thinks the way that you do, or interprets life the way that you do, or has your ideas. And so it's important to be able to look at that, which we don't do a lot, right?
Absolutely.
We're very focused on what we don't have, as you said, but we don't actually take a step back to look at our journey, to see where we're coming from and all the value that we have created
and
for
we're
ourselves.
walking with.
So that's what we're continuously doing every day. We're adding more value through our experiences. Again, at that time, I didn't know that was personal branding. I don't even know about personal branding. I was just doing
You're
what
just exercising.
using what I had to try and stand out in this opportunity. And I got the job on the spot. So I ended up working there for 3 months, part of the opening team. Very quickly again, hospitality industry was not for me. But what happened in those short 3 months is that I started working more with a lot of business and lifestyle media, which is something very different from entertainment.
Of course.
And I really enjoyed that space. And just looking around, I realized that we didn't have a lot of PR agencies at the time. So we had a lot of advertising agencies, marketing firms.
Who are the communication?
Mostly run by men. And in those advertising agencies, maybe you had a PR executive that would now do the PR for all the accounts, which to me makes it very difficult to have strategy and creativity if you're doing PR strategy for everybody. Wow. And so I thought there was an opportunity, and I, with my enough self, decided that I was going to start my own agency, Garrick Communications, in 2009. And it was a boutique agency because it was an agency of one person. I was the boutique in the agency.
I love what you said. I was a boutique, and
I was the boutique in the agency.
And what I always find funny is whenever it comes up on Instagram, you see those memes where it says, the small business owner responding from, to an email saying, "We are happy to help," when the "we" is really me, myself,
Yes, or
and
I
I.
will let Naomi get back to you on this, but
And you're
Naomi is typing the response, right? Yeah. So that was me. So my Garrick Communications was me, my BlackBerry, because that was a smartphone. I had a laptop. I think I had an Apple something at the time. It was a white laptop. A digital camera, because our phones didn't take pictures yet. So yeah, the digital camera to get those PR shots. And that was me. And I remember.
Did you have the baby yet?
Yes, because it's 2009, so Johnny would have been 3.
So you are now going to start your business officially, and you're a mom.
And I knew nothing about business. So I didn't know maybe I should have saved some of my salary before I decided to go off into this venture. And, I remember my car was like falling apart at the time. And it was just, it was not fun. But I thought there was an opportunity. So I got these white polo shirts, got my logo printed on them. I had black pants from Express and a pair of shoes. And that was my uniform, short haircut. And again, because of relationships, the Gleaner heard I had gone off on my own and wanted to write about just this transition.
Yes.
And that was a lifestyle editor for the Flair magazine. And they asked if they could shoot it at my office. No.
Which office? Where?
There's no office, right? So there's no office. But again, relationships. I was able to call Mr. Issa, Spanish Court Hotel, and he said I could shoot it in the lobby.
Look at that.
And they have their beautiful lobby with the blue chairs and stuff. And that article was the cover story of the Flair magazine in 2010, I think it was. It was like a 3-page article, and that's how I got my first client.
What did it feel like getting that first client? Like, you get the first customer.
A lot of imposter syndrome. A lot of imposter syndrome, because I'm just like, do they know what they're doing? Like, are they sure about this? But no, I didn't have a choice. I had to show up. I have a young child at home.
Yes.
Here's this big opportunity. It was actually Victoria Mutual Building Society. And I ended up working with them for a couple of years.
Really?
On a retainer. And I mean, it was a learning experience, because I'm learning. I'm now in an organization where I had to go into office a couple times a week as well. And they're depending on me to assist them with this PR strategy. And I'm leveraging these media relationships that I've developed over the years. And that's where it started.
This is one that I think a lot of people will have. When you're starting off, you're learning, you are winging it, you are applying what you do know.
Applying what you know.
You are trying to figure out the parts that you don't know. When it comes to pricing, when you start off, like I think the first event I probably hosted, I probably charged like $5,000 Jamaican dollars, right? Because when you don't know,
you're just so happy for the little money.
You're just happy, and you don't
and you don't know.
You don't know the value. You don't know you don't even know that there's an industry rate. You have no idea. Walk me through how you've grown, as that person starting off with this one client and not really understanding that the value for something like this is actually this.
Absolutely. And I didn't know. And there weren't a lot of people. So to be honest, the person that I would rely on a lot was Danielle Terri-Karelle, because Danielle had started her agency a year before me, right? So she's a year older than Garrick Communications. And Danielle was that person that I could go to get insight and information. And so something we've always spoken about is collaboration over competition.
Yes.
Right? So yes, there are a lot of us in the space now, but we all offer something different to our clients. We all specialize in different areas. We're all great at different things. And so I am not that agency that if something comes across our desk that I don't think that's our strength, I'm not going to gobble it up because it's money.
Just because.
We're not the right fit for this activity. So so Danielle was definitely really, really great, especially in the beginning for me, because she'd already gone a year in this space as an entrepreneur. So she had more understanding and everything like that. So that was very helpful. But that's what you do. You have to build these relationships so you can pick up and call a colleague in the same space and they don't feel threatened by you asking them about what are your thoughts on rates for this? Do you think this is too low, or do you think I'm outpricing myself? I definitely was never outpricing myself because I was just like, people are not going to pay this kind of money. And it's even now, Terry, like with what I do as a personal branding coach, the first time someone offered to pay me to speak about personal branding, I was just like, people get paid to do this?
Yeah.
Like, this is a thing? You don't know. So it's like every time you do something else, or sometimes a client will come across with a budget and you're like, people pay this? Okay, yes,
Wow.
this is the rate. Okay.
Yes,
And you
yes.
work with that rate until another client's like, our budget is X. You're like, wow, people pay that? Okay, this is the rate.
Ho-
But you look at your value too, because then you start to know that you realize that, people actually have budgets for these kinds of
Correct.
things. I need to know, say, what's the value that we offer, and how do we add more value so we can charge more based on our knowledge or expertise, etc. But you start off not really knowing anything, and you kind of just stacking up the value until you find your sweet spot.
How difficult was it for you to start to own it? So there's a part where you learn and you go, oh, so this is my value. Okay, so I can actually charge this, but you still don't do it because you still question, but will someone pay me this much? So maybe people pay others.
Right.
When do you start to, when did you realize that I'm now going to own it?
It took a very long time for me. So I mentioned not having a degree a lot because it was a massive limiting belief for me. I was very afraid, even with my agency, the fact that people would maybe think that I am a fraud. Like, this girl has no formal training in PR or communication. I don't have a degree in PR, communication, marketing. I don't have a degree at all. And so I would say, oh my God, they're going to find out and they're not going to hire me. And so I proudly used to say that, we turned 15 in October. We've never advertised our company, which is
Yes.
great. But we really didn't advertise because I was afraid to put our company out there for people to now be able to judge or criticize and say, who does she think she is? Right? She doesn't even have a degree in this area. So for a long time, I was always behind the scenes. So I'm in PR. I tell you what to do. I tell you what to wear, what to show up, do the interview, did it. But I was never in front of the camera until I had what I call my year of yes.
Yes.
So as an entrepreneur, we have those times where, life is amazing and then life is not. We love our clients and then we hate our clients, or we are applying for jobs. I applied for a job at Red Stripe. I applied for a job at Digital in communications during that period between 2009 and 2017 because I have a child, you have to pay the bills.
Of
It was just a
course.
lot. And then you're doubting yourself at the same time, but trying to run a business. And so 2016, I was having one of those rough years. And I remember my escape has always been California. That's where my dad
Yes.
lived. That's where my brother lives. And so I remember that Christmas, I went to California with my son. And the January of that year, January 1st, I did two things. I read The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes.
Rhimes, yes.
It's an amazing book. And basically, she just chose to make that year her year of yes, where she said yes to everything. All the scary things, she put herself out there. She did her first speaking engagement. She just did everything. Two was I watched this documentary on Netflix called I'm Not Your Guru by Tony Robbins. And it was basically just remind you that, he's not the guru. You are. It's your mind. Everything is in your mind, and it's letting go of those things, like those limiting beliefs
That you
that
hold
hold
on
you
to.
back. And so I decided that 2017 was my year of yes, and that I was going to not just put myself out there, but put the company out there. So yeah, how many years later? We started 2009, and I didn't start putting out Garrick
Till 28.
Communications, worst Naomi Garrick PR chick, until 2017, where I started applying for different programs and fellowships that I never applied for because I didn't think
You
we
were
were
worthy.
worthy, right? And we'd never get into this program. So I applied to Vital Voices Grow Fellowship, which is a global fellowship for female entrepreneurs around the world. They had over 1,000 applications. If the application was due May 12th at 11:59,
That's
I sent
exactly
it
when
at
you-
11:58. I actually got a prompt to say, hey, we saw that you started your application, but it's due like tonight. And I sent it, and I ended up being the only female from the Caribbean to get into the cohort that year. It was a year-long fellowship. We went to Ireland for a week. They paid for everything. That's where I learned about just a lot about running a business. I also applied that year for Scotiabank's Vision Achiever
I
program.
remember that one.
And that was just basically teaching you how to work on your business instead of in the business, right? So, and taking action in all the different areas. I remember that was I think a 17-week program, and I won the award for transform company, and that was a big eye opener for me. I had
And even as you're seeing those things and those things are happening, are you now kind of going
slowly,
slowly you're
slowly.
coming to the realization, slowly you're becoming okay with owning that
Yeah, because
greatness?
it forces you to look at like your journey. What's your value? All right, you've had this agency for how many years, but what's your differentiator? Like, why should people use Garrett Communications, and what's the difference that you bring to this space? So it made you do that deep dive into your business and what's the mission? Like, why are you even doing this? So it was the first time that I created a vision statement for the company or a mission. This is 2017 and the company started in 2009. Mission statement, vision statement. What are the company's values? Like, what does our future org chart look like? Like, where do we see ourselves in the next 20 years? Like, what do we want to be known for? So that changed just my whole way of thinking. I went to Tony Robbins conference. I walked on fire like Oprah and did all the things. Because again, it's a reminder that your mind controls everything, and you have to train your brain. And so that's what changed my whole level of just consciousness and thinking and about myself.
Correct.
And so the not having a degree never became, I started talking about it. So that was a year I shared for the first time. A lot of people didn't know I didn't have a degree.
No, because you're operating at a level, you have to.
A lot of people
It's
didn't know that
assumed.
my car was repossessed and all kinds of things during that journey. And I shared that actually so I'm very big on visualization and
Yes.
creative visualization. And I write things down a lot. I think there's power in writing and getting it out of your head and on paper. And I remember one night I had written in the notes in my phone that I wanted to be a woman that inspired, right? I wrote that. The next morning, and I kid you not, I woke up to see an email that says, to a woman that inspires. And it was an email from Cortia Bingham asking me to speak at We Inspire Women, literally the next morning.
No way.
And I remember I quickly said yes. And then that was in May. The thing is in August. I thought I was going to vomit every day
Leading up
until
to
August. I wrote and rewrote and wrote and rewrote. I was the only speaker that went up with notes, like with papers, because I don't do that. I don't do public speaking. This is not my thing. And it's personal. So that was the first platform that I shared my story. And it was a very out of body experience for me. It's speaking on a stage is still a very out. I get nervous. My armpits sweat every single time. They're probably sweating right now. It's a nerve wracking experience for me, but I power through. And I remember when it was finished, there were a line of young women waiting to speak to me because they wanted to talk about how my story resonated with them or how similar it was to theirs. And it was in that moment that I decided that, listen, if you can impact one person in a positive way by going on a stage, it's worth it. Let's do that. That's what led to writing the personal branding book and all these things, for that really, our coach just said in Vision Achievers, find a way to make money in your sleep, right?
Yeah.
Nocturnal revenue. And she said, like writing a book. And I'm like, I'm going to write a book about PR. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, who wants a book on PR? Like, who's going to buy this book? And then I think I had watched like a Tony Robbins something, and it spoke about just value and showcasing value. And I literally woke up and said, I need to write about how I got here without the degree. And I found these I always have pieces of paper by my bedside.
Where you do your
and I just had scrap bills, everything. And by the time I was finished, I walked into the office the next day and told my team, I'm like, guys, I'm writing a book. It's 8 steps to building your personal brand, because it was 8 steps by the time I was finished. That was in October of that year. The book was launched in March.
I have my copy.
My intention was not to be no trainer, coach, speaker. I just wanted to make the money that she spoke about that you could make.
But there was also another redirection. That
Completely.
in and of itself was a redirection, and that literally opened up
a whole world. As a matter of fact, I love PR, but I really love helping professionals to unlock their greatness. And that's what I do as a personal branding coach. I really help individuals to really look at their journey, right? Understand the value that they bring because of their unique experiences and skills and knowledge and expertise, and how to communicate it. Because sometimes we know that we have these things, but we don't know how to tell people about it. And especially women, we do not talk about our greatness. We keep ourselves small.
We're taught to be humble.
We don't, right. And
behind the scenes.
And you know what's really unfortunate? It's really other women that I find that kind of hold back a lot of women in that space. Like, don't, because they weren't raised to do this. So when they see the younger generation doing it,
It's a threat.
it's frowned upon,
It's more
right?
of a threat than an opportunity.
And so, that's what I get. I get real joy and real just, it's very fulfilling for me what I'm doing now.
And I think it's a joy to work with you, Naomi,
you.
because I know you personally. And I think for you, nothing is transactional. And you've said it. You've said relationships so much, because I think at the core, you don't just go in to do business and to transact. You go in because, one, you care. And you actually want to take someone from point A to point B, and you are going to give off all. You're going to give it your all, and you're going to tell them, so this is what I'm suggesting, but you're also going to care about where their comfort level is. And I think because of that beautiful way of how you treat people, it just makes it easy for you to actually have them unlock that potential.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. It just makes me feel good. And I remember when I just released the workbook, the first one, and I would see people pulling it out of their handbags in like the pharmacy to say, "Hey, look!" And you see it like worn and
Torn and used.
like, I take this with me everywhere. And I mean, that was just mind-boggling to me. And I mean, I've been doing it now for 6 years, since which I didn't even realize, because with the pandemic, that was a blur. But for 6 years, and so now to the point where I literally just formed my company, PR Chick Company Limited. Like yesterday, I got my certificate. So now I can really commit to building out that side of my life, which I love. So, yes.
Okay, just because I'm sitting up for the podcast, because if we were not like on, I'd like lift up my microphone and
It's just
I would
happened.
jump
I've been
on
working
you.
on it, and I'm just like, should I really? But I love it so much, and I get so many requests now to do this kind of work. And I think that my team is in a good place with Garrett Communications, where the business can run without me, even though I'm
Without you
there,
having to
but I
be
don't
there
need to be there.
physically.
Well, I also realized after traveling to LA 8 times last year that the business actually could run without me. Thank God I have an amazing team. Big up to the PR chicks. But this is what I love to do. So yeah, I love PR. I love working with my clients, but I really love working with people.
When you look at where you've been, where you've come from, the imposter syndrome, the doubt, oh my gosh, I don't have a degree, I will never be worthy, I do not belong in these rooms, I certainly do not belong at these tables. These big companies are calling me.
It's always weird.
Yeah,
To this day, sometimes I'm just like, I mean, I know that we're great at what we do, but it's just like, do you know who just sent us a request for proposal?
It's still like, wow.
Sometimes it's still like, because I do know my journey.
Sorry, baby.
And it's just like, wow, even the professionals, even companies that ask me to come and do workshops for their teams, I'm just like, they know I don't have a degree in anything. Like, that's sometimes it creeps in, but I'm like, Naomi, you
Your
had
track record.
20 years of experience in marketing and PR.
It's a track record.
What are you talking about? So I have to slap myself sometimes. Honestly, sometimes you have to do that. You have to like give yourself a kick, because you're just like, what are you talking about?
I said, shut up.
Sometimes I tell people like, imposter syndrome is something that creeps in for everybody, men and women. And sometimes you have to write down your little and big wins as a reminder. So something I actually do at the end of the month, I try to be consistent, is I look back and I jot down all the things I accomplished this month, so that I can just remind myself, I'm like, girl, you did some amazing work. Like, you did some really great stuff, even the little things. Because sometimes we feel like we don't know enough if it's not a big thing.
Yes.
But there are little things that really, really matter. And that's what I do to kind of kick imposter syndrome to the side. When I feel it coming in to kind of like,
you're like, shut up.
Be like, you're not, are they sure they know who they sent this to? Like, sometimes my voice will tell me that. And then I'm like, girl,
I have a track. I have history and track record to prove it.
Years.
Listen, one word to describe you.
That's a very. I feel like we have asked this question for people on Emerge, and I've never thought of it for myself.
Yeah,
I think resilient is a good word for me. When I look back on my journey, when I look back on just last year, and just even what I'm going through right now, personally, experiencing grief in this way for the first time, and still being able to show up for my team, show up for my son, show up for my family, show up for my brother, even though he's all the way in California. I'm actually going back there this weekend. It's resilience, I think. I'm not a I'm not a fan of the word because resilience means that you have the ability to bounce back, and sometimes you don't want to bounce back right now.
Correct.
But yeah, I think that would be the word. Yeah, I think I've been very resilient over the
Yeah,
years.
and for me, and we were talking about it before you came on, and it's just the fact that you've dealt with things so gracefully. I mean, being an entrepreneur is one thing. Being a one woman show is one thing. There was COVID. You're running a business. You have people that you had to pay. It is making very hard decisions. COVID did a number. I'm gonna try to see if I can like get in 5 questions here. You said resilient. And there are realities that a lot of people never look at because we're showing up because we have to show up. And so people tend to assume that, well, everything must be sailing well for you.
It's not. I'll just say that it's not.
Yeah, COVID came along. What are some of the lessons that you learned? And what are some of the decisions that you had to make as a business owner who was now responsible for the other lives, not just yours and your sons, but the responsibility is so heavy when you are the person in
COVID was
charge.
rough. I'm not gonna lie. So Terry, you would have known our first really nice office.
Yes.
We thought that was our dream office. We had great partners in the space with us, and we had to move out of that office because it just didn't make sense to be paying this kind of rent. I'm in PR. Nobody's thinking about PRing anything in a
Crisis.
pandemic when we don't even know what's going on. So what happened was a lot of our clients either paused our retainers, some canceled the retainers altogether, some asked for a reduction in the retainer. We moved the office to my house. So it was a lot of uncertainty. And then thank God we had one client that we had literally just signed their contract for the year and they paid us quarterly. That's what saved
Got you
us that
through.
year. Honestly, I definitely had a bit of what I like to call COVID madness because I started baking and I don't bake. So I started like a side hustle company in the pandemic called PR Chick Bakes. Yep. And I was baking cinnamon rolls and chocolate
You're
chip
so
cookies
good.
because I was going to lose my mind. And how that started was I was baking banana
Banana
bread.
bread.
You've had it because I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I'd be like, anybody with bananas, I'm like, give me your bananas and I will make banana bread with it. And I was just giving away banana bread to everybody. And then my son, I think, was sick of banana bread and was like, Mom, why don't you try this recipe? And it was for cinnamon rolls. And I did my own tweaks to it. And some friend had come over and asked if they could order some. I'm like, of course you can. I don't know how much these things
Do you
cost, but
still do it?
I
Do you?
absolutely not.
Not.
My brain can't even like process making cinnamon rolls right now. It's just like that's why I really think it was like my coping mechanism.
Correct.
My friends have asked, people have asked all the time, and I maybe have made cinnamon rolls 3 times since the pandemic because
Yeah.
I just can't cross it. I have all the ingredients, but it's like a mental block I can't. It's trauma.
What is it about your team? And I think it goes back to relationship, but I want to hear your answer that during the roughest part, COVID was rough for everyone. To keep your team intact and to still have a team that said, we're not going anywhere.
Open communication, keeping them in the loop with everything that's happening. So they were very aware with what was happening with each of our clients. They were just very aware of our situation, and we were just trying to make the most of what we could. So I think being transparent as a leader is very important. Getting real-time feedback, getting suggestions from the team. So, we still maintain. So my style is very family style
Yes.
with just relationship. I'm relationship driven. I'm
Driven,
sorry. It's my
absolutely.
core value, right? And so having really good relationships where my team could reach out to me if they had questions about what's happening. We had those open lines of communication. And I think that's what really, really helped us to navigate the pandemic. Navigate this working from home versus in office versus working from Naomi's house situation that was happening. And then, once things started normalizing a bit, and the fact what I am still 1,000,000% grateful is the fact that I did not have to lose a team member or
Yes.
reduce anybody's salaries during the pandemic. Because
That's-
if it meant that I would have to starve, I would have just have to starve because I am not doing that.
That is
that would have to
impressive.
be like the last
Last.
resort. I would just figure it out.
3 questions left. You spoke about grief. And I know that I don't think anyone ever finds the words to express condolences, even though we say it and we do feel sorry and we say prayers and you're in your prayers. I don't think life ever prepares you for grief. What has grief taught you?
It's still teaching me. It's very fresh. So as you would know, my dad passed last year, November. So we're not even at 7 months yet. And it was very fast. So he would have been diagnosed January 2nd of 2023, and he passed November 14th of
No
2023.
time.
So not a lot of time. So everything was very fast. And I was traveling a lot to be up in California to assist. So as I mentioned earlier, I went 8 trips. I don't know how my company functioned. I'm very grateful. I don't know how I functioned, but my brain is very problem solving kind of in that way. So it's like you're just doing the things that you need to do, right? So you need to be in LA. We need to be here. I think one of the things that helped me was I have another very close friend, your daughter's namesake, Naima.
Yes.
And her mother also had passed of cancer. And one of the things she had suggested to me when we realized what was happening was to start therapy. I know the generation above us, that's not their thing, but therapy is important for everybody.
I appreciate
And what it
that.
allowed me to do was to start preparing. So my therapist would recommend books that I should get to read because I'm a reader. So I want to understand what's happening and what to expect.
What to
So she
prepare
recommended
for.
different books about grief and, I didn't get to say goodbye or whatever it was. So I was kind of reading, but also it allowed me to just express my feelings because yes, I have my siblings, but we're all going through a lot. So, you don't want to burden anybody. And it's a very difficult thing to talk about, especially you have friends that have lost parents from cancer too. It's triggering.
It's a trigger.
So,
Correct.
where's your outlet? And so that was a very big outlet for me. And to this day, I still do my therapy sessions because it has led me to talk about a lot of things that I realized that I've just never expressed
held.
to anybody. So that has helped. But what I realized, as my therapist said, is that I was having a lot of pre-grief. So what I realized was leading up, maybe a couple months before, I could be just driving in my car and I would just start bawling in the traffic. It would just come out of, it's the most inappropriate thing. Grief just shows up when it feels like.
And it doesn't care.
It doesn't care. And that's what was happening a lot. And when I spoke to her, she said it's because it's like your brain is preparing. It's like you know what is coming and it's like your brain is already grieving, right? You're grieving already. And so then, when it actually happened, it was also unexpected. And, I tell people we don't know what it is. I don't know if it is your Holy Spirit, it is your conscience, it is that feeling, that gut feeling. I just had this feeling that I needed to go to California. And I remember, and I'd just gone because I'd gone in October. And I had a feeling that I just needed to go. And I looked at my calendar and I saw that I had like a window of 2 weeks. So I was like, with nothing. So I was like, you know what? Let me go. I went to California on the 8th and my dad passed on the 14th.
Jesus.
So I tell people when you hear that little voice, you have to listen, know yourself, and act on it. And it's still a process. It is like I had my birthday last month.
Yes.
That was very difficult for me because I'm used to getting that birthday phone call and he would sing happy birthday. And so the night before was rough and the morning of was rough, but I have a great support system.
Beautiful. And
That
Father's
was
Day is
really,
coming up as
and
well.
so I am actually going up for Father's Day so that my brother and I can be together on Father's Day. So I'm actually going to LA this weekend. So we have to find the ways we talk about him all the time.
And to celebrate
it's
him.
just still a process. There's so much to do. He wants his ashes to be in Ethiopia, so that's going to be a trek. We have a trip that we need to plan. But it's stages, and honestly, Terry, I just have to take one day at a time. So today I could be feeling good, and then I could leave here and go and ball in the car.
And it's okay.
And that's what I've realized. I just have to.
There's no shame in it.
No, I definitely don't feel shame at all. It's just that it just shows up when it feels like.
And
I'm
it's
like,
disrespectful.
not right now. Like I'm not. Can we just? Not right
do
now.
it right now.
Like not right now. But it's like, it grief will suck up on you and you just have to just let it flow. So that's what I'm learning.
What's the biggest seed he's sown in you?
Oh my God. Belief in self. I know that even though that wasn't me in the beginning. But the more time I spent with him, and I used to record him talking just a lot, and realizing how he kind of forged his own path, because even with his work with Bob Marley, there was nothing called an art director or creative director when he started, but he made up that rule. Hanging around and drawing stuff, and then drew something, and
There has to be some kind
Bob
of
was like,
title,
yeah,
some
man,
job
that look like
description,
the album
something.
cover, and that's how it started. And then he has created a whole career, and his albums are like recognized by Billboard top 100 albums in the world. He believed in himself, and he used all of his knowledge and abilities and all his experiences. So when I really look at it now, which is really redirection coming back full circle, is what my dad was a brand builder.
Yes.
He built Bob Marley's personal brand.
And you are literally
And I never looked at it like that.
legacy. Like that's
So he was always very, very proud of me. Like he would tell, I would meet, even to this day, I meet people who are meeting me for the first time, and they're like, oh, Neville always spoke about, he said, you have the #1 PR agency in Jamaica, whether that's true or not. That's what he told.
I didn't believe that.
He was
Okay?
very proud of his children. And he really always, education was a big thing for him. And so I think that's why I was so disappointed myself with not graduating. He would have loved that. But he'll be happy to know that his grandson really wants to go to UCLA.
Look at that.
Yeah, he wants to go to UCLA. That's where my dad went. But yeah, I think it's belief in yourself. Belief in yourself. Understanding your roots, where you come from, was very important.
And carving out a space for
carving out a
yourself.
space for yourself. Like, it doesn't have to be what everybody else is doing, or you don't have to pick the traditional route. But doing your thing
And owning
making a
it.
name for yourself. Yeah, owning your space.
Of your vast experiences, the highs, the lows, the ins, the outs, the disappointments, the bounce backs, what's your most priceless moment?
Ajani, 100%.
Who is a big man now?
Who is 18
I
now.
see you post some
What
picture
am
on
I gonna
Instagram
do
and I
next
say,
year?
who is that big
Terry,
man?
What am I going to do next year when he leaves me to go to college? The last 18 years of my life have been about this little person. But yeah, he has been my biggest accomplishment to date. I'm so proud of him. He's really stepping into his own space. He's now doing the IB program at Hillel. He's deputy head boy.
Yes.
He's just doing a lot, and I'm really, really very proud of him. So he has been my biggest accomplishment. He is one of the reasons why I chose entrepreneurship, because I wanted to have that time and flexibility that my
present.
parents had with us, to be present. And it has shaped just a lot of things that I do, decisions that I make, the people that are in my personal space. A lot of it has to do, like, how does that impact Ajani? And so, yeah, he is my sunshine.
Perfect answer. My final question to you. By the way, big up yourself, Ajani. Most of us don't recognize you because I'm just like, who is that big man?
I know.
But I see you doing so. I see you in him. And it's really beautiful to see what time does, even 2-3 years, how he has literally grown.
You
literally.
look out for
and
Naima, because let me tell you,
not
those
even-
years just
we're not
they
even
just
the same girl who's
go.
wearing my clothes right now. We're not even going to talk about Naima.
my.
What is your definition of redirection? How you've experienced it, how you've seen it, how it resonates with you? What's your definition?
My definition is to not be deterred by the detours in life, right? Just like we have our GPS, and sometimes we're going on the right track, and then sometimes we get that little notification saying we need to make a U-turn, right? But that's okay. So I feel like understanding that the journey of life is a complete redirection, because, as Michelle Obama says, every day we're becoming the person that we were meant to be. And sometimes we need these things to become that person. It's a continuous journey. The bumps, the speed bumps, the potholes, everything. If we wouldn't be where we were without these things. And it's okay if you get bumped off track, because redirection could take you somewhere else that you didn't know you needed to be.
My darling.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm a fan of yours. You know that I'm always very excited. I'm excited to see when you're on stages. I'm excited when you are doing your workshops, and it's because I've always remembered you saying, you know, Terry, I don't like really going on the stage. And I'm like, look at you now. And I know you're still becoming, but as you are becoming, you're also helping other people to become as well. And I think that's really where your joy is. And I think that's where your gift and your calling is. And it's just great to see you grow from strength to strength. We're really proud of you. A lot of the crew members know you, and just know that you have cheerleaders near and far, and just thank you for being here. I appreciate you being in the redirection seat simply because I knew your story was one of, look at how much she was able to accomplish even without having the necessary things and labels that society sometimes tells us we need to have. Thank you for owning you. Thank you for being that PR chick. Thank you for being that brand coach, that author, whatever it is you choose to even step out and do, we already know that you're going to do it excellently. So thank
you,
you.
Terry.
No, man, we got you. But you need to keep on baking the banana bread because the banana bread is delicious.
I know.
It's delicious.
And I know you have someone that appreciates them too. So I feel like...
So, guys...
If I make again, I'll make for you guys
you
for
better.
Sure.
And I know you live. I know you
where I
live. So I'll find you. Guys, thank you for watching another episode of Redirection with Terri-Karelle. I hope you love the diversity of the guests, the diversity of the stories. And I think what we're trying to say is, your blueprint is your blueprint. Your road is your road. Your journey is your journey. Your destination will be your own. But we can all relate to moments of detours and roadblocks and having to be redirected. And it's so great when we can hear other people speak about how they were able to take that redirection and make it their own. So if you liked this conversation, don't be stingy. Send your comments, your ratings, your reviews. Share to inspire, to motivate, to empower other people. So thank you for watching. And again, I'll see you next week. Make sure you stick around for next week's episode of Redirection with Terri-Karelle. Thank you to our partners, MasterCard, Heineken 00, Toyota Jamaica, Commercial Concepts, Spaces Jamaica, FHC Credit Union, Beauty Brands by MDS, Go Shore Couriers, and Brescia.